Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Comic Book Nostalgia. I'm CB Nostalgia, and we have a little update on the MCU Daredevil. Well, I don't think there's probably any series that has more fan hype coming to Disney Plus than the upcoming reboot of Daredevil. We do know Charlie Cox is returning as Matt Murdock, and with Vincent D'Onofrio back in a role as the Kingpin, fan hopes were pretty high for this series. Now, Marvel hasn't given us a lot of details about the show. In typical Marvel Studios fashion, they're keeping it under wraps. But there was a really cool report earlier today from the team over at Murphy's Multiverse. Now, many fans are really wondering how this Daredevil project is going to come together and what tone they're going to strike. You have to admit, all the Disney Plus shows have been pretty diverse in terms of tone. WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Moon Knight all have very specific niches and tones that they dive into, and fans are wondering where Matt Murdock will fit into this equation. Now, the team at Murphy's Multiverse actually talked with Ms. Marvel's co-creator and executive producer, Sana Amanat, and the discussion did turn to the Man Without Fear for a couple of minutes, and she might have given us a clue on what we might be seeing from this version of Matt Murdock. What she revealed was this version might be a bit brighter and lighter and actually draw inspiration from that recent Mark Waid run on the comics. When the team at Murphy's Multiverse suggested the Mark Waid run, this is what she had to say. I don't see why not. Mark Waid's run was pretty seminal. We've never seen that kind of story, and I love the spin on that, and it was such an unexpected take on the character. In the same way, I wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that in the MCU. Why not? We like to take risks, and this is the fun part of exploring stories. So maybe. In the early 2010s, Waid took over Daredevil, and he took it in a completely new direction. Contrary to what the Netflix shows and the classic Frank Miller or even Brian Michael Bendis comics established, Daredevil, over his publication history, has not always been quite as dark as he's been portrayed. Actually, quite often, he's somewhat of a very bright, sometimes comical, and swashbuckling type hero. And since we're getting a new version, a variant, of the character in the MCU, it would really make a lot of sense. Now, Mark Waid's version of the comic, I actually really do enjoy. I've linked some of them down below, and it is something new for the Devil of Hell's Kitchen. Well, as long as he stays in Hell's Kitchen, because this series goes places. Now, the visual tone in this series was completely different. It was super colorful and very what I would call superhero-esque. There's also some very cool representations of Daredevil's visuals as far as his radar sense goes. That wasn't something we saw well established in the books before Waid's run. I actually think this is something Marvel could probably use for their version of Daredevil and do something quite different than what we got before. It never really was established how super Daredevil's superpowers were in the Netflix show, and leaning into that, especially with some cool visual representations, would be a great way to go. Now, the series does go in some different directions and has some pretty cool villains. The Owl, the Shroud, and Purple Man are all part of the series, and heck, even Foggy Nelson ends up with cancer. Additionally, the show doesn't stay in New York City. The second half of Waid's run sees Daredevil relocate to San Francisco, bringing on all kinds of new baddies and challenges, and could be another nice way for Marvel Studios to separate their version of Daredevil from the version over at Netflix. I think you might see some interesting fan reactions if they were to remove Daredevil from the classic New York City setting, but there's a lot going on out in the Bay Area, and I could totally see Matt Murdock teaming up with another local, like maybe a Scott Lang. Now, obviously, none of this is official or from Marvel Studios, although Amanat is one of the executive producers for Ms. Marvel, so the insight there is pretty valuable and something you should take seriously. Obviously, when we get any more news about the MCU Daredevil, especially something official from Marvel Studios, we're going to make sure we get it to you right away. Again, I've linked some of Mark Waid's run on Daredevil down below. If you're kind of curious on what you might be expecting in the series, it's probably worth your while to check it out. So until we get more news, what do you guys think? How do you feel about the MCU version of Daredevil taking a bit of a lighter and brighter tone on Matt Murdock? And are you a fan of Mark Waid's run on the Devil of Hell's Kitchen? I have to say, it really was a nice change. Tell me what you think in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure you hit like, click subscribe, and if you don't ring that bell, you're not getting any updates. Peace.